Yeah, so we'll be recording this webinar so that it is easily available on our website. Whoever has missed this webinar could view this. So I have turned the recording on. Yes, coming to the trustee program, the program today has certified over 793 million kgs of tea, which is close to 60% of the Indian tea production. And trustee has been able to bring changes in the life of over 6.7 lakh workers and over 85,000 small tea growers. So the webinar today, today's webinar, we are looking at reviewing the progress made on women's workplace right and safety in tea gardens, identify the issues, explore ways to work together to find a resolution to create a fair and discrimination-free workplace for women and tea garden workers. So let's get started. I would like to invite our director, trustees, foundation director, Mr. Rajesh Goyal, to apprise the audience on the role of trustee program towards women's right and safety in the trustee verified entities. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Anika. Hello and good morning. I am very happy and it's my privilege to be talking to this august audience about this very critical topic of women's rights and safety in the workplace. I will be sharing a presentation and I would like to request all of you to let us know about any questions or other things that you may have on the topic going forward. And we have sessions where we are able to answer questions. On the topic of women's rights and safety at workplace in the tea garden, we have today a lineup of very eminent speakers and panelists, and you'll be able to hear from them in a while. But to kick off the webinar, I'd like to talk about the role of trustee program towards women's rights and safety in the tea garden. With a brief introduction, and then how there are specific mandates in the code, how trustee actualizes the compliance, and what are the partnerships that we are forging for a better future. Now, as someone who grew up in Assam, my earliest memories of a tea garden are of the ubiquitous women tea pluckers who are deftly plucking tea leaves and tossing them into the basket on their back. Little did I know back then that one day I'll be working for an organization that befittingly honors the women tea garden worker by adopting their likenesses and organization logo. And you can see the logo on the top right-hand corner of the screen. Now, trustee is a very unique assembly code that was conceived, formulated, and implemented by a cross-section of the stakeholders of the Indian tea industry. Hence, it is grounded in the sustainability needs in the Indian context. Now, as envisaged by the stakeholders at the time of inception of the program, the cornerstone of the code is a holistic approach to the quest for sustainability encompassing the equitable development and participation of the entire tea supply chain, of which the female workers are a very crucial segment. Hence, empowerment and creation of a just and enabling workplace for the female workers is enshrined as a very crucial goal of the program. Now, this is all the more important since the dice has always been loaded heavily against them, be it in the allotment of work, domestic responsibilities, participation in collective bargaining, or options for upwards occupational mobility. The women workers have to tackle a number of odds as they go about their life every day. The trustee program was launched in the year 2013. And it is a very interesting coincidence that it was in the same year that the Prevention of Women from Sexual Harassment Act, commonly known as the POSH Act, was also introduced. Now, coming to the specific mandates in the code, today there are more than 300,000 women workers who work in the affiliated entities of the program. Therefore, the progress that the program makes collectively plays a significant role in transforming the workplace environment for the women tea workers in the tea industry. The trustee code has both mandatory and zero tolerance criteria points on equal rights and prevention of harassment at the workplace. And we'll talk about this soon, but the key focus areas that the program is following is on equal pay for equal work, non-discriminatory workplace free from harassment, delivery of maternity benefits, PF and gratuity to all the workers, non-allotment of hazardous work to adolescents and women, quality of the creche facilities, and proper toilet facilities in the workplace. Now, talking of specific mandates in the code, to begin with, we have a mandatory identification and record keeping. So it eases the compliance checks and the organization's ability to monitor how they're doing against the workers who work for them. Now, the specific compliance requirements that are part of the code. So these are all mandatory and some are what we call zero tolerance. Equality of treatment. Now, all workers should have access to jobs, training, and promotion on equal terms, irrespective of gender, age, origin, color, status, orientation, religious or social origin, which means the women workers are also part of this discrimination-free workplace. Very important is that we ensure that equal work is always remunerated with equal pay, irrespective of gender. And then there's this very beneficial statutory requirement where if there are more than 50 women workers, then there has to be a good creche facility for the women. And it should have adequate areas for sleeping and facilities as required and specified. The other point that I want to mention is that although the trustee code very clearly mentions that there will be no discrimination or harassment or use of corporal punishment for mental, physical, or sexual harassment of any kind at the workplace, we have also called out deliberately some specific provisions of the POSH Act to focus our attention. These are also part of the zero tolerance criteria points. We track the number of employees trained on the POSH Act. We make sure there's a policy to prevent and address sexual harassment and other forms of violence against women and girls. Transparent grievance mechanisms to report cases of harassment. A process to refer survivors of violence to essential community services. Process to establish awareness amongst the workers of the laws and workplace policies to prevent harassment, equality, and other forms of violence. A very well documented standard operating procedure for the trained supervisors on how to identify, prevent, and address sexual harassment. Because it has been our observation that the understanding of what constitutes harassment, that's an area where a lot of needs are there in terms of training, and we are doing our best to fulfill that. And then we do verify the training of the employees and supervisors to make sure that the system is in place. And these are mandatory requirements. Now, the maternity benefits which the law provides is very beneficial for the women workers, and we want to make sure that these benefits are provided without any discrimination as per the legal provisions. Now, in addition to the redressal mechanisms that are provided by the POSH Act, trustee also has this process of ensuring there's a grievance reporting system, and the women workers have access to the generic grievance reporting system also. So these are the very specific code related requirements prescribed to ensure that there is no harassment and equal opportunity and discrimination free workplace is provided when an entity becomes a member of the trustee program. Now, how do we go about getting this on the ground? Now, what the entity has to focus, they must have a policy on non-discrimination, which is applicable to the all workers, temporary and casual. In fact, we also have a model policy, which is as a reference material, which has pointers to make sure that all the required points are covered in the policy. We provide the entity has to provide awareness on equal opportunity and non-discriminatory practices to all. The terms and conditions of employment are to be based on an individual's ability to do the job and should have no relation to his race, origin, caste, birth, gender, orientation, marital status, or other opinions. Now, the employment letter that is issued or the contracts that are issued and wage records, the entity has to verify to see if there is any discriminatory practice in those documents. We need they have to have a very specific and focused approach to ensure compliance on women's specific statutory benefits on maternity, welfare, creche, and non-employment of women workers in hazardous work. And then, of course, the establishment of the internal complaints committee as required by the POSH Act. And then in concurrence with this, making the female employees aware of their right to redressal of harassment in the workplace, because compliance to having a committee is just the first step. But making the workers aware of their right and creating an enabling atmosphere for them to come forward with their complaints, that is the area where the whole concept gets on practically implemented at the place of work. Now, how trustee works with the entities towards compliance. Now, we provide handholding and training to the entities by implementation partners on ground, and they provide awareness and clear knowledge of the requirements. We ensure that all the updated legal protection and entitlements for the women workers are available at the fingertips through Trustee's digital e-learning platform. We have also created an animated video in all the languages of tea growing areas that sets forth the requirements and actions, including legal requirements for avoiding sexual harassment and discrimination in the workplace. We have guidance on specific assessment criteria. So how do we find out that the practices on the ground match what the code expects to be followed? So for that, when the assessor goes to the ground or the entity does its own internal audit, we have a standardized checklist which provides the specific guidance on the assessment. We do on-site review of the crash facilities and interview the beneficiary mothers. The other very crucial thing that we do is we interview a randomly sample group of female workers away from the management by female interviewer. It's a tool to evaluate practices and perceptions of the women workforce in a very enabling setting. Now, this provides information for the auditors, but it's also important that it is shared in confidence with the management to help them in calibrating their policies and practices. Now, some of the documents we mandatorily ensure to check is a policy on non-discrimination, wage records for all areas where women workers are employed, and the records of the payment of maternity benefits. So, coupled with the requirements, we have three main tools to ensure that there is a discrimination-free workplace and the rights are ensured. One is the requirements set forth in the code clearly. The otherwise the duties of the affiliated units, and the third is how trustee facilitates that these requirements are fulfilled in the trustee verified entities. So these are the three-pronged approach that we take for ensuring that the system is followed in the right way. Now, this is what we are doing as a code. Now, although we are a sustainability code, we have been making a conscious effort to deliver deeper impacts by moving beyond certification. So like all other social sector causes, there is a multifold increase in the value proposition if organizations with like-minded goals and approach come together for a cause. So we are forging partnerships to bring focus improvements in select areas. And I would like to mention the two partnerships that we have now effective. One is with UN Women. The UN Women is the global champion for gender equality and is represented in an advisory capacity in the multi-stakeholder trustee sustainability council. Now, the expertise and reach of this global multilateral organization will provide an unique opportunity for trustee to deliver value in the field of women's rights and safety. And trustee in turn will collaborate in areas where the reach and expertise of trustee will be beneficial to the initiatives and projects of UN Women related to the tea industry. The other partnership with the Women's Safety Accelerator Fund. Now, the WSAF seeks to create a safe and empowering workplace for the women worker. It is a joint initiative of IDH, HUL, ETP, TESCO, and Tailors. Trustee and WSAF are in the process of formalizing a formal memorandum of cooperation in areas of mutual interest. This will help in furthering the goals of providing a safe and empowering workplace for the women workers in tea gardens. In fact, this webinar that you are attending today is a collaborative effort of trustee and WSAF. Now, through these partnerships, this is what is very important. Now, through these partnerships, trustee will be able to deliver world-class value, knowledge, and best practices to the trustee affiliated entities in their efforts in providing workplace rights and safety for the women workers. So we feel that the program, there's a long way to go, but we feel that we have taken the right steps to ensure the right working environment for the multitude of women workers who work in the tea industry. Thank you for listening. And if there are any questions, you can feel free to ask in the allotted slots.
So we have I mean, someone has raised their hand. I'll just check that. Just a second. Sir. So should we take the question? I mean, Mr. Fukan has raised his hand. I think he has some questions. So let's address that and maybe move to the next section then, sir.
Yes, please, if we have time.
Yeah. So Mr. Fukan, if you would like to ask something. Maybe my mistake. Yes, I think. Okay, thank you so much, sir, for enlightening and updating the audience on the steps taken by Trustee towards empowering women in Trustee verified entities, how Trustee works with entities toward compliance, and how Trustee code is formulated towards transforming the workplace environment for women workers in the tea industry. Thank you so much once again, sir. Now I would like to welcome our keynote speaker, Dr. Paulami Pal, the program specialist ending violence against women, India Country Office of UN Women. Dr. Pal has 14 years of experience in the development sector in India. Her work has been at the intersections of issues related to gender and gender-based violence, women and work, and formulation and critical analysis of policies. I'm really glad requesting Dr. Pal to kindly address the participants.
Thank you so much, Anika, for that. Good morning, everyone. Could we have the slides on? Yeah. Good morning, all participants and esteemed panelists, and of course, our host, trustee colleagues. To begin with, I would like to share that I'm fairly new to UN Women, but I'm not new to issues of violence, and I've worked in supply chains, specifically in the garment sector. We would like to thank Trustee to give us the opportunity to present our engagement in the tea sector, specifically working on empowerment and safety issues of women in tea gardens of Assam. I would also like to thank my colleagues, Manoj Das, Dr. Sangamitra Dhar, Ridhi Chofla, for all the support and work towards this presentation. Yeah, can we go to the next slide, please?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, just I'm going to the next slide.
That's all right. This is the premise of our work in tea sector. Our flagship program, the Safe Cities and Safe Public Spaces, for the first time in India, was implemented in rural settings in Assam tea gardens. We at UN Women have been working on issues of women's safety and rights in tea supply chains in India and Kenya since 2016. The Global Women's Safety Framework for rural areas was developed based on our multi-country engagements. This framework was later on used in other country contexts in tea industry and other supply chains subsequently. We also drafted a guide to support the implementation of the Global Women's Safety Framework in rural spaces, which was also developed. If it's possible, we can also share these two with the audience later. We can go to the next slide. So, what does evidence say about violence against women and COVID-19? Since our current programming of UN Women in India is geared towards interlinkages of COVID-19 and violence against women, it is important to establish some facts, which I'm sure all of you are aware of. UN Women in 2021 did a rapid gender assessment in several countries, 52 to be precise, which showed that 65% women reported experiencing violence in their lifetime. 4 in 10 women felt more unsafe in public spaces. Further, 1 in 5 women felt unsafe walking alone during the day, and even jarring, 1 in 2 women felt unsafe walking alone during the night. 1 in 4 women said that household conflicts have become more frequent. Similar statistics have been also seen with rising number of violence against women and girls which they have experienced within their communities. We can go to the next slide, please. This is in continuation with the earlier slide. Statistics from WHO, World Health Organization 2021 points out that globally, 245 million women and girls aged 15 years or above have been subjected to sexual and or physical violence perpetuated by intimate partners. With COVID-19, 65% women and girls were exposed to direct or indirect forms of violence over their lifetime. As we can see, crime statistics from NCRB 2020, Assam has thrice the national average on crimes against women. Overall in India, as we saw globally, domestic violence increased by 2.5 times during February to May 2020, as per a National Commission for Women data. We also know that during the pandemic, as was the case in India, as statistics showed, Assam also showed women frontline workers such as ASHA workers, Anganwadi workers, women collective members, women SCG members were in the forefront of fighting for COVID-19 and were most at risk. Also, global statistics say that 1 in 10 women sought help of police if they experienced domestic violence during COVID. So this slide, thank you, Anika. This slide is in the context of tea gardens. In Assam, the data is from the Tea Tribe Welfare Department. As you can see, 803 registered tea gardens in Assam, and tea gardens have more square kilometers than non-tea garden areas. Also, there are 48% temporary workers and 52% permanent workers in these tea gardens. Also, as Mr. Bhuya has also mentioned, gender statistics of these tea gardens, that is also good to know. We can go to the next slide, please. This slide is also actually regarding the past and current programming of UN Women in India, specific to tea sector in Assam. The past programming from 2016 to 2020 was aimed at social, economic, political empowerment and lives free of violence for women and girls in Kenya and India. In India, as many of you know, we did a direct outreach of more than 15,000 women, men, girls, and boys. The current programming is a COVID-19 response and recovery intervention, looking at health, well-being, and safety of women and girls in tea gardens in Assam for this year. We are at the inception stage of this programming and aim to reach around 8,000 women in the tea gardens. Can we go to the... At UN Women, we are looking at strategies for social, systematic, and policy level changes, which is possible by interconnectedness of various steps, as you can see. Evidence generation for greater accountability, strengthening capacities, broadening partnerships, and creating effective communication tools. In the past, we have reached out to the Department of Women and Child, Government of Assam, Tea Board, Women's Commission. We have also built partnership with the Social Welfare Department, Labor, Education, Health Department, Judicial Homes, Education institutions, tea producing partners, tea associations, and media agencies. We have strengthened capacities of legal aid clinic workers, functionaries of one-stop centers, and also Assam State Legal Service Association. Sorry.
I'm really sorry. Just a second. I'm resharing. By mistake, it turned off.
That's all right.
Can you all see the screen?
Yeah, and not yet. Can we go to the next? Next.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next.
Is it next? Okay.
This was done. Yeah. This one.
This one.
Yeah. So our intervention has been, this is based on our prior work. Our intervention has been at 2 levels in promoting favorable social norms, attitudes, and behaviors at the individual and community level. This has been done through several initiatives, creation of collectives, for example, Jugnu clubs, building capacities of producer partners, government empaneled lawyers, children, teachers, parents, women, men, health service providers. We also conducted trainings on gender responsive budgeting, women's safety audits. We also did comprehensive early intervention programming for elementary schools and creating communication materials for awareness generation. We have also enabled legislative and policy level environment in sync with international standards of ending violence against women programming. This has mostly been achieved through trainings on laws, for women workers, management, staff, producer companies on POSH, awareness generation through campaigns, all aimed at strengthening the voice and agency of women workers. I would like to share a quote of a woman as a part of our Jugnu Club, which was created. It says, earlier our supervisors used to mistrust us, foul and use foul and sexist language. But after the formation of Jugnu clubs, male workers became more aware of how they behave and impact their behavior. We observe a change in behavior and language of our supervisors. I can see an improvement in my overall status and decision making. If I experience any harassment, I have the confidence to say something. I can no longer fear raising my voice against these issues. So yeah, we have the next slide already. Our programming has been directly linked to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. As you can see, Goal 5 on gender equality, Goal 8 on decent work and economic growth, Goal 11 on sustainable cities and communities, Goal 17 on partnerships for the goals. Next slide, please. As you can see, and already I have mentioned in the past, our work has shown creation of legal aid clinic, conducting women's safety audits, supporting the exercise of policy assessment, gender sensitization training and workshops. We have overall trained 153 officials in 6 estates on the POSH Act, amongst others. We have built capacities of nearly 19,000 women and girls on understanding safety at home, at work, in public spaces and in online spaces, the interconnectedness of violence and also intergenerational aspect of violence. We have formed the Jugnu clubs and empowered women to act as first responders and change agents. As per our program report 2020, the pre-training assessment indicated 99% of Jugnu Club and Mothers Club members were unaware of legal provisions as well as helpline numbers. After the interactive capacity building sessions, 75% of total participants demonstrated enhanced understanding of domestic violence, sexual harassment at the workplace, and 95% of total participants were able to recall the correct helpline numbers. Can we go to the next slide, please? We have developed several IEC materials, and we are happy to share the link with this group through colleagues at Trustee. The films are meant as discussion starters on social norm change, types of violence, sexual harassment at workplace, how to tackle it, and some redressal mechanisms. To end my presentation, I would like to show a film called Lakir, which speaks of drawing a little line to address violence against women. As a disclaimer, I would like to say that evidence-based research points out that violence against women is all pervasive, and this does not only exist in tea gardens. Also, one of the aims of this film is to understand the cycle of violence and the intergenerational aspect of violence. So can we have the film, please? Thank you.
I'll be sharing the film, just a moment.
Thank you. It's just a 2-minute film.
Yeah, I'm just putting it. Just a second. Can you all hear?
Yes.
काय रे हाय मैं फौजी से यहाँ खाना पीना बिना खाए के भूखे है एक बात के कोनी कोनी समझक लागी तोके हैं चल चल तोके बताबो कांदू तक खुला है भरी है तोर हैं एक बात के खानी खानी पूजाव लगे तोके
Thank you.
This was really a touching video, and so yes, thank you, Polemy, uh, for providing us the feeling that there's so much required towards ensuring the right and safety of women at workplace. As well as I understand, there's so much has been already done, but we are yet to reach that stage where we can ensure the safety of the women at workplace. So yes, we come to our next segment. I see there's some raised questions in the chat box, and there's some people.
Mr. Tugan has raised his hand.
Yes.
If you have a question, please, you can ask that, Mr. Tugan. Mr. Tugan, can you hear us? We can see you have raised your hand. Do you have a question for us? Okay, we are unable to get through. You can type in your question. We can answer it later. Thank you.
So we have another question from Aravinda coming up, which is what are the three top problems related to women's safety on tea gardens? Yeah, okay.
So maybe I'd like to request me to address that.
Yeah. So I think, it's very difficult to say top three in a sense in the order of priority. But definitely, given our mandate of UN Women, I would say the interlinkages of domestic violence, violence at workplace, public space violence, these are one of the issues. There are issues around work, which is gendered in terms of less pay, or how women are treated in the workplace. So there are a set of issues related to work of women in tea gardens, amount of the time they spend. And the third issue I would say is the burden of unpaid care work, in which, which is not very specific to tea gardens, but it is actually specific to women workers in general in any industry or sector, where we have, the issue of women's unpaid care work. So yeah, thank you.
So there is another, there is sub question what Aravinda is saying. How does this change in other regions like Bengal, Kerala, Nilgiris?
So, this is a very generic question, and I am primarily also a researcher, and, evidence-based research in specific contexts are very specific. Like you have to see gender indexes in states, you have to see which sector you're talking about, you have to see what has been the developmental parameters specific instances of violence, if you're looking at violence or, status of women economically, socially, politically in a particular in a particular state. So you can't really, have comparisons between states and sectors in a sense. So it is a difficult question to answer. If there is anything specific you want to ask, I mean, I'm very happy to go for it, but I just wanted to spell out some of the issues which you might, unintendedly be posing, because it's very difficult to compare sectors, states, indicators, and status of women. Thank you.
So Aravinda, would you like to unmute and ask Dr. Pal something specific, or does this answer the questions?
Thanks, Anika, and thank you, Dr. Pal. No, I think I will, as more questions come up, I'm sure I'll have. I'm on mute because there's a lot of work happening and there's a lot of noise from my side. That's why I just sent it by the chat box. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aravinda. So I think Mr. Sen has now raised his hand. He has his microphone working. Would you like to ask something, Mr. Sen? Okay, so maybe we move to our another segment, which is definitely the intersection section of the webinar, that is a panel discussion. And we have eminent personalities with us. We have good speakers with us. And I would like to introduce our speakers, Dr. Nazrana Ahmed, who is an academic, industrialist, and an advocate, and a chairperson as well for minority women empowerment in Assam. She was the first lady chairman of Assam Tea Planters Association. We have Ms. Shikha Mukherjee. I think we all know her as ex-advisor of the APJ group. Now she is an independent journalist. And we have Mr. Pranjal, who is the general manager of Goodrick. So basically, Mr. Pranjal graduated from NIT Rourkela in electrical engineering and worked with ITA for 10 years. And then he has been associated with Goodrick from the last 17 years. And he steered social and other sustainability initiatives, including the group sustainability certification program. We have Ms. Manisha Majumdar from Women's Safety Accelerator Fund. We are doing this webinar in association with WSAF, as Mr. Bhuyan correctly said that. So I would like to, and Manisha is also going to moderate this panel discussion. So I would like to hand over the floor to you, Manisha.
Thanks, Anika. Namaskar. Good morning. As Anika mentioned, I am from Women's Safety Accelerator Fund, which was primarily set up to accelerate the scale of the UN Women's Global Women's Safety Framework in Rural Spaces, which Paulomi just mentioned in her deliberation. And thanks, Paulomi, for sharing the film Lucky, which is much used by our implementing partners for awareness and general discussions within the tea garden communities. Just to reiterate a few lines about the fund and the program, this fund was started with the initial partnership of Unilever and IDH, and we now have Twinings, Taylors, ETP, Tesco as partners joining the initiative. And thanks, Rajesh, for the brief intro. In India, WSA program work on women's safety and gender-based violence in the tea value chain, trying to create models for the tea producers and tea companies, and also to replicate and scale the model in tea and other regions and sectors. So we really are very keen on seeing what kind of models we are able to generate through our program for replication and adaptation widely. And this program in the initial has an initial target to benefit over 200,000 women tea workers in 300 tea estates over the next 3 years period. So that's very much in succinct what this program is all about. I believe we have now around 45 minutes with us, so it's a good amount of time, and we have three esteemed experts from the tea industry. I believe we have a combined and evolved experience of more than 60 years with us, and we should try to take the maximum advantage from having you all together, including Paulomi and Rajesh, obviously. And a sincere request, which also includes me, if we can stay brief and focused to get the maximum leverage from this August gathering. So with that, I would like to start with Ms. Shikha Mukherjee. Ma'am, as Anika mentioned in the introduction, obviously you have been a past advisor and a huge amount of experience, which has been changing over the years and the decades. What are the current issues on women's rights and women's safety in the tea gardens? If you can, Paulomi, of course, share three priority issues. If you can elaborate on the nature of vulnerabilities for girls and women in the tea gardens with specific examples from your experience. So with that, just to set the context, what are women's rights and women's safety issues that are there in the tea gardens? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Monisha, and hello to everybody, friends and people that I know. I'm very, very happy to be on the same panel as Pranjal and Nazrana, both of whom I respect greatly. I see that Jagjit is here, Harki is here, and others are here. But to let's get down to brass tacks. First and foremost, I really have no current information on what is happening in the tea industry or in the tea gardens of Assam. I've been out of it since 2020, so I have no specific information. But having said that, let me also ask, and this is a question that I wanted to share while speaking about what is the status of women and issues of sexual harassment and their safety in the tea industry is, has any statistics or data been collected? Is there any statistics or data on how the COVID period and how women's safety, which was globally, there is evidence that women faced more violence, there was greater sexual assault, there was their condition worsened, they felt far more unsafe. Has any data been collected by either Trustee or WSAF or UN Women on this? And if there hasn't, why hasn't there been this data? The responsibility of collecting data and then making an assessment is imperative. Not collecting that data is avoiding the issue. And I think that, for me, summarizes in some ways the response of the tea industry in generic terms. And the reason why I'm saying this is very simple. See, I was an insider for some years. I am now an outsider. Looking at things from the outside, what I am seeing is that, yes, sustainability codes like Trustee are demanding compliance of employers, and they have an audit system. But are we actually seeing any transformation or change? And if we are seeing this change, a sample of one of a Jugnu Club member is not good, not after so many years. And that, I think, is, for me as an independent person, that for me is a matter of concern. The second thing is that these structural problems of the tea industry are not going to go away. So within the structure, there is only that much change that can be made. And frankly speaking, having been through an audit process, having sat with auditors on multiple occasions, the fact is that the Sexual Harassment Act is not meant to be specific to the workplace, but that is how the audit process works. That is how everything works. Whereas the issue is women's dignity, women's self-respect, women's self-esteem, and the violence that they face, or the discrimination they face, or the kind of, the other kinds of ways in which women are made to feel like second-class citizens all the time. And these are issues that need to be addressed. The structural problem prevents that from being addressed because, frankly, the tea industry can never invest and has never invested the kind of resources needed for that. And it's not expected that they would as employers. There is something else that needs to happen. And though we have attempted it on various occasions, and many tea gardens have brought in the government to do its job, the government's role is intermittent, unsatisfactory, performance, etc. What I think begins to bother me today is, when someone tells me that we are working to avoid sexual harassment. How can you avoid sexual harassment? What is this avoidance mechanism that we have? Can there be an avoidance mechanism? And these are questions that now need to be raised, and the solutions need to be found. The reason why I'm saying this is because UN Women has been working in the tea gardens for some time. WSAF has been there. Across the board, the sustainability certification processes require us to be compliant. And yet, there is structural violence. Yes, women's participation in decision-making is not happening, has never happened. You have these feel-good stories. And frankly, today, when I'm looking at it from the outside, I find these feel-good stories and a kind of consolation mechanism. We are trying to console ourselves that something has changed. About women who are so empowered that they speak up at meetings and they demand action, etc. But what triggers this demand? Have we addressed the issue before the demand is raised? And these are questions that I'm sort of actually addressing to Poulomi as well as to Manisha, because these are design issues for programs like yours. So I think I'll end there. I've said enough.
Yeah, you really have raised the very pertinent issue, perhaps a reflection of the lack of, yeah, you are very right, lack of designing at our end. Just to mention that, there has been some study which has been done by Oxfam on the COVID situations in tea gardens, and we at WSAV also are trying to gather information so that we don't, what are the missed opportunities that we had. That was the very initiation of our program during the COVID period. But thanks for flagging of that issue, ma'am. We'll come back to you surely, to delve a bit more on some of raising issues, but what are the steps that we can take one is designing, one is talking about how community can be more aware and capacitated, along with engaging with the management. But I definitely would come back to you on that. I would like to go to Mr. Neopnes next. I can see he's there, right? Mr. Pranjal Deo, are you there? Yes.
Yeah, I'm there.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Hi.
I hope
Okay.
I'm audible.
Yeah. So you would be the right person to go next after the issues that raised by Ms. Mukherjee. Gudri Gardens definitely have been part of many of the programs, progressive programs by Abita, UNICEF, Her Respect, etc. And you also have IC committees as per the POSH guidelines. So, how have Goodrick managed to address some of the issues that are there, much more than what Shikha ma'am raised, and share some of the positive steps taken in those gardens to address women's rights in workplace. In your sharing, if you also can talk about, building awareness and what has been your observation and experience on sexual harassment, especially sexual harassment and issues around workplaces in line with the POSH guidelines. Yes, to you, Mr. Neo.
Sure, Manisha, thank you for including me in this panel discussion. First of all, to be called an expert in the presence of eminent people like Shikha ma'am, Mr. Sidhu, Mr. Kandil, and so many others is a bit embarrassing. But for the sake of the discussion, I will take it. Very rightly pointed out by Shikha ma'am in terms of the concerns which continue to exist in the industry as far as women's safety and concerns with specific regard to structural and design issues. I'm not sure if I can quickly come up with any solution, especially to those issues. Structural issues remain. We do not see women, especially in the estate operations. We do not. It's not a common sight to see a woman as an estate manager or a plantation manager. At the most, we see a medical officer as a women as a medical officer. There are women welfare officers, which are all empowered positions. And I think the way forward is to continue to hire more and more women in places where we can. And these are some of the identified places. As far as Goodrick is concerned as a group, we have identified certain areas where including more and more women is a feasibility. We experimented with changing our operational executive structure, where we went to premium institutes to hire women executives. We did that, but we have not really succeeded. That is as far as the structural and the design part of the whole overall issue. Having said that, I'm not suggesting that it will not change in the future. Within our own group, we understand that women's safety of women and children is a concern. But we have taken a number of steps. Sorry for that interruption. We have taken a number of steps, both formal and informal, in terms of creating the requisite structures under the POSH Act by forming a central sexual harassment committee and ICCs in all our operational units, training the ICCs, training the ICC to train our workforce en masse. That is work in progress, and it's going to take time. It's a huge work. I realize this because we started some very positive projects in 2018, 2017, 18, and around that time. The global pandemic created a bit of pause, and but then these projects are still on. There are, apart from creating ICCs and creating harassment committees and putting in place the structure, the requisite points under the POSH Act, is one part of the entire exercise in creating awareness around sexual harassment and domestic violence. I feel that it has to, this entire concept has to be built in all of our welfare programs. We cannot just leave it to creating an ICC and sensitize a group of 10 women per garden and say that we have created this committee and then we are compliant. Compliance is one issue, but creating mass awareness and creating an atmosphere free of fear, free from domestic violence, free from possibilities of sexual harassment, that is a long shot. And that's going to take a long, long time, because while you and I can continue to claim that it is non-existent and we are compliant and we have systems in place, but perhaps beyond our sight or beyond our vision lies issues that we need to address. Within our group, we have undertaken 4 very interesting programs where we have a scope, we have provided scope for women to be participating in this program. One such program is the what is called the PSEP program, where a large section of people from all stakeholders within the community becomes a part of what is called the Community Development Forum. And a large number of these committee members are women from the garden. Some of them are non-workers, some of them are panchayat, women representatives in the panchayat department. Some of them are women representatives in the trade union. And they form what is called the Community Development Forum. This is under the Plantation Community Empowerment Project. This is a partnership project that we have rolled out in 2 of our estates in Assam. And we find that bodies like these are very powerful. They have provided a platform for people to come and discuss issues, not just that of production, but of social issues, issues that include subjects like domestic violence, subjects like adolescents, health, women's health, health of mother and child, issues like tuberculosis, issues like menstrual hygiene, and so on and so forth. A comprehensive set of issues are included, and these committees develop something called the Estate Development Plan. The Estate Development Plan contain issues that impact the entire community in the estate. And these we find alongside other bodies like Mothers Club. Mothers Club is an extremely powerful unit in almost, I think, 90% of estates in Assam and West Bengal have these bodies. They're very powerful groups of people. We need to recognize that these are units which can create a lot of work, create a lot of awareness around sexual violence and domestic violence, sexual harassment and domestic violence. These are informal structures which can, I think, assist the statutory requirements in order to eliminate the entire issue of sexual violence. What we have as a group identified is that there is a large possibility of including women in the supervisory cadres. I think all of us associated with the tea industry would know that more than 50% of our workforce comprises of women, but very few of them have risen to supervisory roles. One of the ways that we can address this issue around empowering women and eliminating any possibilities of harassment would be to train and encourage women to take up supervisory roles, bring in more women sardars. And we have done this en masse. In a large number of our estates have now a large number of women sardars. And the overall observation, I cannot furnish, I cannot submit data to a clear set of data to, make a very, very robust claim. But a general observation through our operational work is that they make great supervisors and also help create a work atmosphere where women feel safer. There are other multiple programs where we find that these issues can be taken up. Women can be sensitized more effectively. We have programs on menstrual hygiene management, which we have rolled out across our group gardens. And these women, groups of every tea estate has groups of about 12 to 15 women who we call them Blue Angels. And these Blue Angels are again agents of change. They're all empowered people. They're trained to be able to talk to masses, sensitize issues on women's health and issues surrounding the larger questions of harassment and violence. Coming to the specific issue of domestic violence, another observation which I would like to share, which I'm not sure if all of you agree, but this is my own observation pertaining to our 29 estates here in India, is that more than sexual harassment within our estates, it is perhaps domestic violence which we need to be more concerned with. I think that is prevalence of domestic violence is more than the prevalence of sexual harassment. Domestic violence, why this remains an issue of concern, is because most of it is not reported. And we find it challenging to identify instances of domestic violence. Only extreme cases are reported where the wife wants to take it to the police or escalate it to a level of filing a complaint, that she comes to the hospital and asks for a medical report. But if instances are not of that degree, it doesn't get reported. Therefore, I think there is a need to create, again, informal structures within the lines, within the residential areas where there is a mechanism to get reported and address these issues. So these are some of my observations. I think we can take it forward. I think there is a restriction on time. I would pass it on to the next panelist. Manisha, there you are.
Yeah, thanks, Pranjal, and thanks for sharing that the efforts that Goodreek has taken in promoting more women as servers. I think there has been a question in the chat box from Karishma, one of our participants, asking the same with whether there are any examples. So Karishma, I think, there are many other examples from other gardens also and other companies about how they are pushing the glass ceiling, but there is a lot more need to be done in that space. Taking cue from some of the initiatives taken by, as shared by Pranjal, and initiatives taken by Goodreek as a company, and also, taking some of the pointers raised by Shikha ma'am, I now would like to request Dr. Nazrana Ahmed, if you can share some of your opinion, how women's leadership can be built for collective bargaining on some of the issues related to that already have been highlighted, and how they can have create those spaces for their own safety and rights in the form of negotiation and collective bargaining. Also, if you can refer to from your example, past experiences, what are the or could be the available spaces within the tea estate management to address some of those issues. So available spaces where women's issues can get placed and shared, which are matters which generally do not get discussed. Yes, Dr. Nazrana Ahmed, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. There are two parts to the question that Manisha has put. To talk about collective bargaining presupposes an awareness of their rights, presupposes an awareness of the Trade Union Act, presupposes an awareness of the Equal Remuneration Act, presupposes an awareness of the Plantation Labor Act and all the other laws. So how do we go about it? There are two parts to it. I was a little late to join in, but what the gentleman from Goodreek, Mr. Neo, was saying, he was talking about the structural setup and domestic violence more than harassment. And that is one of the concerns that acts like that has a crab effect. And what do I mean by the crab effect is that women who aspire to leadership roles, who aspire to be agents of change, who are aspiring to crawl out of that quagmire that they are in, are often pulled down by a certain set of women themselves. And this can only be said by a woman because there are so many like Madam Sikha, like Manisha herself, and all of them, and Manju Barwa and others who have broken so many glass ceilings in the way forward. But yet we often see that where you have community leadership, where the community as such have age-old ideas and age-old practices very ingrained in their social way of life, it becomes very difficult for a woman to come forward and be a leader. So what do? We identify women and we train them on their rights. Obviously, this is not a thing that can be done over a course of a workshop. So I believe that tea gardens and tea estates and associations and all the other associations who are working with tea estates should partner with the District Legal Services Authority, the DLSA, District Legal Services Authority, to have a series of awareness programs so that they are sensitized about their legal rights. Not only rights which give them wages, that's guaranteed. It's black and white. There is no gray area in that. But awareness of the rights that allow them to be an equal citizen of this country, equal citizen in their family, where their earnings are taken away by the men in the family, which is the common norm, and wasted. 77% of the workforce is women, but yet they are suffering from malnutrition. They are suffering from various other health problems. And often, in spite of having the best interest, if it doesn't come from within the family, the aspiration for change doesn't come from within the community, it is very difficult to percolate down. There are only ripples on the surface. The water, the message does not percolate down. We are almost a 200-year-old industry. What are we doing? We are still talking about, domestic violence. Today, if we look at, I always say that let us look at where a society is, where a community is, where an entire industry is, which is an industry which is an entire way of life. It is not just an industry where you go and produce a plastic bowl or a plastic cup at the end, or a tire or whatever. At the end of the day, you go home. No, we live within the estate. We live within the industry. It is an entire community. What have we found there? Let us look at it through the structure of Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's a triangle where at the base you have the physical needs, that is hunger, etc., taking care of your water needs, taking care of your nutrition, taking care of food. All those things are taken care of. Next, you have a shelter, available water, electricity, etc. All those things are taken care of. So where do we aspire? Where do our workers, where do we as a tea community aspire next? Is to have dignity in the workplace. And dignity in the workplace emanates from the home. Workplace is only 8 hours. And in the workplace, per se, there is no harassment. Because it is, as a woman, I am telling you, and as a person who was born in an estate, raised, for so many years, there is no, if somebody points out one or two instances, yes, I have often heard in my talk, some people come and point out to me, it's an aberration. Let me tell you, it's an aberration. It's a fact. And it is a very well-regulated industry. So the violence emanates for the women at her home. It may not be physical violence per se. So often, at 2 o'clock at night, at 2 a.m. in the morning, there are 2-3 people at the hospital asking for what? First aid. What happened to you? I fell down. Where? Near the water point. Is it a fact? Often it is not. What has happened is that a drunk man in the family has beaten her up. But does she have the courage to say that? No, she doesn't have, because we have not created that enabling atmosphere. Our work has to create a structural change. Our work has to create that enabling environment for her to be able to speak and say, yes, I am facing domestic violence. Yes, I aspire to be a leader. Yes, I would like to know about my legal rights so that I can sit at the next agreement for wages. Because it is my livelihood, I am taking care of the family. Most often or not, it is the woman who is the breadwinner of the family. But yet, can she spend her own money? Unfortunately not. Unfortunately not. Because she doesn't have that enabling environment for her to take that stand and say that this, I have earned this money, I will decide how I will spend it. Often it is not. So the thing is, obviously, how do we go about it? Is if we partner with agencies like the District Legal Services Authority. They create a series of programs to generate legal awareness, to create awareness about trade union rights, so that they are an equal active participant in collective bargaining. Collective bargaining doesn't only presuppose trade union laws, it presupposes what is the marketplace, how the marketplace is changing because of climate change, how the environment is changing because of what is happening in other countries, the economic environment is changing. So we have to make her aware, because at the end of the day, we have seen that Toklai had taken out a map where they showed that due to climate change, in another 30-40 years, in a few decades, tea plantations, the contiguous tea plantations that we see from Tinsukia, Dibrugarh, Sibsagar, Jorhat, Golaghat will shrink. It will not be the largest contiguous tea plantation in the world anymore. So what will happen to all the women? The men will go somewhere else to find a livelihood. Will they be trafficked? Are we finding alternative livelihoods for them? So when they come for collective bargaining, they should be aware that what is my generation going to do? What is going to happen in my years when I am on pension. Will this industry sustain? What is the sustainability? So it presupposes a whole ecosystem, a microcosm of what is the industry, because this is an industry like no other. We live here, we work here, it's a way of life, and yet it's an industry. That it's a commercial enterprise at the end of the day. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We have 10 minutes to go. Before I open up the floor for questions and answer Q&A session, because we have
Manisha, I would like to interrupt here. Before we get into question and answer session, can we have a round of photograph, please? So I request everyone to turn on your camera so that this webinar could be captured.
Surely.
Requesting everyone to turn on your camera, please. Just give me few more minutes and thank you so much. Over to you, Manisha.
Thanks, Anika. Before I open up, in fact, during our discussions for preparation for this webinar, in our conversations, it seems that, Rajesh repeatedly brought out 2-3 very core areas around women's safety, which came out through the trustee assessments. And two of them, he was very keen on flagging off. One was deficiencies in creche facility and the Maternity Benefit Act, and issues around that, along with other safety measures, not having shades, rest shades, snake bites. What are the safety measures? Usage of tools by women workers and all. So the point that which emerged also from the discussions which Shikha ma'am mentioned, that there are acts and laws in place and policies in place. So compliance from that point of view is completed, but at the same time, the implementation of some of those or drive towards that in terms of getting real benefits out of those acts is somewhere, in many places they are missing. And that is not what I am saying, that came out from the assessments that trustee did. So because this also has been a very key area of concern, which not only came from the trustee, but from our engagement also, we know. I just wanted to flag it off. If anyone from the panel would like to respond to that. Also, we have quite a few experts from the tea sector as participants today. So I would also request, your thoughts and responses, not only on the broad range of issues that were flagged off today in terms of addressing women's rights and women's safety, but maybe something more if you want to flag off at this point of time, it would be great to hear. The floor is now open for question and answer session to all the panelists, including follow me, please. Thanks.
Manisha, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I've been listening to what has been said today, and I have also had some experience in seeing tea gardens as they function at first hand. One of the things I think, we keep talking about violence, we keep talking about domestic violence. Nazrana very rightly pointed out that women's wages are appropriated by men because there is a patriarchal order and it is an accepted norm that this can be done. I think one of the investments that the tea industry or organizations like yours needs to make is in creating shelters, safe shelters for women fearing domestic violence, victims of domestic violence, because it has been my experience that the rigidities of the tea industry, where one home is allotted to one person and to a family, and it's an enormously complex social situation. So why can't you create shelters for women where they can live safely away from the violence till a solution is found? What is so difficult about doing that?
May I respond to what we in the WSA program is doing, ma'am? So you are absolutely right. We need to have a transitional kind of shelter, but the government also has got a lot of schemes and programs in the form of Swadhargriha, one-stop center, and in our garden, what we are trying to do is trying to build some of the services, in bringing those services to the tea garden workers community and how that can collaborate. So what has happened in the process, many of the tea garden workers post this in the process, in the past 1 year's experience, I can only talk about, is they actually have taken advantage of these services, especially of the one-stop center, because now they know the links, they know the people who are over there, they can just call up. And so that it has, I completely agree with you, there is much more that requires to be done. If there are any other examples and suggestions to which Ms. Shikha Mukherjee ma'am has raised, most welcome.
I think Harki, you raised your hand. You had some comment. We'll be happy to hear from you.
No, I lowered it afterwards. Yeah.
Okay.
First I must congratulate the whole panel for bringing up very good issues and very pertinent, and also the work going on by Trustee and others to tackle these problems. But I would like to delve on the issue raised by Shikha in the beginning regarding the structure. The tea industry structure needs to be re-looked at. We can have committees, we can have everyone working in lines and whatever, or they can be in, these panchayats and everything. But unless we have the management structure a little altered with bringing in women, it's not going to work. It's because it sends a message down the line. Now in I think 1995, we took on the first 5 ladies as executives, right? And one of them is in a very high position in the Tea Board of India now. But what happened with that was I needed to sensitize the management first. All the managers and general managers and assistant managers, I needed to sensitize them first. So, let's start up there also. It's a big one. You will see in estates, in certain gardens, you will not have much domestic violence. It's because of how the management behaves in that garden, how closely they are aligned with their workers and women, and how much time they spend with the women in the plucking. Today, the management spends very little time with the women in plucking. I'm talking about 52 years ago, but all that time, our area was that you have to be with the workers. If you didn't spend 60% of your time with the workers, you were not doing your job. Today, it's 20%. What you heard from the women while you were plucking was major. It made you take decisions which made them feel someone is listening to us. So I think we need to, I don't want to delve into the other things which have been raised by all the experts, but I have been through this industry at every stage, starting as a trainee and 52 years in it. So, I can tell you about how I have seen it and what I think we need to relook at. Thank you. I won't take up more time.
I think we have a comment coming from DT, and then maybe for the sake of time, we'll have to wrap this up. I understand that 1.5 hours is just a drop in the ocean for this issue.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for giving me a chance and opportunity to share one of my experience here in this webinar. Sir, here I'd like to share one of my experience, because as I have been associated with tea for quite a long time, so I know actually what actually happens in tea garden. So here, as we are talking about the domestic violence, what is mostly prevalent amongst the more on women, it is true. Here, when I joined the, I have seen a lot of violences was there. On the sexual harassment was also there, where women doesn't know how to come out with their problems, where to go for it. But later on, I have seen ABITA have taken a lot of initiative to work in the ground level. They have from some committees, women girls club and all, and some sensitizing programs, awareness programs which were being conducted in the labor lines, the help of ASA workers and mothers club members. So quite a lot of work have been done in the ground level, where I was also a part of. So there we have seen slowly the changes have taken place. The women's they started coming up. Later being with them, one thing I have realized education is the main thing, because am I audible, sir?
Yes, absolutely, loud and clear.
Yeah. Thank you. So they're education. I realized the lack of education, where they keep their girl child more engaged in home, for making khana and all, to make food. They engage their girl child at home, and they send their boys to school. Again, with this ABIT support and all, we have started going towards to the ground level, work on it. We wish to influence the parents, to encourage the girl child come forward to have enrolled their names in the school. And it started off slowly the girls started coming to school, but still there was where parents, they don't agree at all to send their girl child to the school. But after when they get educated, when they have started their school, they again discontinued. See, up to class 8 they study and they discontinued. There is a case of marriage also, child marriage. They conduct child marriage. They that was also a major factor, where the girl child, they could not complete their education, and there were and other issues where they are this drinking of liquor, where in tea language it is called hari. Hari is a very major factor for having violence in the tea community. Whatever the education the women can have, if they go to school, the college also, but still they have to undergo such kind of violence because of this hari prevalent too much in the labor lines. So they are here, the garden management, along with the help of unions, mothers club member, line chowkidars, they have to work very hard to the ground level. They have to work to avoid to remove this hari. Hari is a major factor for having violence in the tea garden community. That I feel actually women as a sexual harassment, domestic violence, it is everywhere, not only in the industry, it is prevalent in other sector also. But this drinking habit, it is more prevalent in tea garden sector. That is why violence is more. A woman can have education, but because of this prevalence of this liquor, this hari, what is called in their language, for that particular thing, there is a lot of violence during Durga Puja. During Durga Puja, they have cinema shows. So there they will have lot of cases, like there were cases of like female sexual harassment cases will be there, violence is there, violence within like man to man violence is also there. A lot of hospital cases comes up. So during that time, team management, they cannot leave the garden. So this is a major factor, like once if this can be removed, suppose this hurry, if it is possible to remove completely, I know it won't be possible, but it can be reduced to a lot of extent. If one can work on that particular thing, lot of things can be prevented. Sexual harassment, domestic violence, a lot of things like this can go to a lot of like, it can help to a great extent, I feel, from my point of view. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Over to you, Anika and Rajesh. I saw Pranjal's hand up, so I am not sure whether Prajansi wants to go, but over to you, Anika and Rajesh.
So because looking at the time, we have already crossed 5 minutes. So I would like to close this session. We had really interesting things coming up from the speakers, and we have questions coming up in the chat box. I would like to, request everyone you to email me the questions, and while I'm sharing the recordings of this webinar, I will definitely pass it on to panels and get their views, and will share it with you. So as I close this webinar on behalf of Trustee Sustainability Foundation and Women Safety Accelerator Fund, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to all our speakers for sharing your valued opinion and experience here today. I also like to take the opportunity to thank all the invitees for listening and participating in this webinar. Thank you all and wish you all the best.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Very useful.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Great panel.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
sir.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Here,